interview of Alice Williams conducted by Carolyn Steinbrink. Alice, we're going to talk a little today about your memories of the 1930s. And you told me earlier that you and your family moved to Shenandoah in 1923.
Yes.
Is that right? And will you tell us why you moved to Shenandoah and where you came from?
Well, I came from Missouri, and there was a large family of us, and it got so, it was hard. Dad was a hired hand, and we couldn't, they didn't have enough work for him, and he started a blacksmith shop. And he had plenty of work, but the farmers didn't have the money to pay for what he did. And we were sitting at the table one night. We didn't have too much to eat on the table, and he said, well, we're going to have to move or we'll starve to death this winter, just jokingly. And the next morning, my two older brothers got in their old regular car they had, but they had one they could drive around. And they went to Clarinda, and they came over to Shenandoah, and then they went back home. And they said, Dad, we've been those places, and we chose Shenandoah.
Okay, so they picked the place for you.
So they said they liked it in Shenandoah better than they did in Clarinda. So then Dad came up, and him and Mom, and they hunted a house to rent, and we moved in on Halloween, October 1923.
Okay, and how old were you then at that time?
15.
15. And so then what did you do? How did this affect you?
Well, I did housework off and on during the summer. And then in the spring of 1927, I got a job at the telephone company, Northwestern Bell Telephone Company. And I had two sisters working there at that time. And so then I worked during the summer, and I had planned to go back to school in the fall, and during the time there was an opening for me. And so the chief operator said, well, if you would like the job, you can have it. So I was so excited over it, and I went home and I told my dad, Mom, and Dad says, well, he says, you suit yourself, but he says, we need the money. But he says, let me tell you, if you take the job, he says, you be sure that you keep it, because he says, I don't like to have you taking a job and then work it a while and quit. He says, I want you to stay with it.
So how long did you stay with it?
46 years.
I think you did fine. What kinds of things, as the phone operator, did you notice happening in Shenandoah because of the Depression? Did you see changes?
No, not too many. It didn't affect that very much.
Uh-huh.
Although it did affect the employees. They were going to lay off some of the employees, and we were working 48 hours a week at that time. Mm-hmm. And so the officials from Council Bluffs came down and visited with us, one thing and another, and we said, well, we'd rather take a day off in order to keep you from laying off someone. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did, and we went to 40 hours. Mm-hmm. And then when the Depression was over, we never went back to 48 hours.
Yeah. And so you had, what, 5 days work then and 2 off?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. What do you remember about the clothing of the 30s? What kind of clothing did you wear to work? And
oh, we wore mostly wash clothing because we didn't have air conditioning, and it was so warm.
Uh-huh.
And we all wore gingham dresses. We weren't allowed to wear slacks. We didn't wear slacks at that time.
Yeah. And were they homemade? Did you?
Oh yes, we did our own sewing.
Uh-huh. So you did your own sewing, your mother didn't sew for you, or?
She'd help us when we got in a bind, but we did our own sewing. And we wore gingham dresses, and when it was hot, we usually worked a split shift, 4 hours, then off, and then 4 more hours. It's usually what we worked. And we worked 9 to 5, or 9 to 1, and 5 to 9 was usually what I worked for a long time. And I'd go home at 1 o'clock and change my dress and wash it out and iron it and wear it back to work that night.
Oh. And you had, what kind of an iron did you have to use?
Electric. We had an electric
did you?
iron.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that was a step up.
That was one of the things that we got when we moved to Shenandoah, was electric iron.
And did you, like, when you were not working, did you wear different kinds of clothes, or did you still wear dresses?
We wore dresses, but they were older dresses. We changed our clothes when we got home, but wore the older clothes. And
what kinds of things did you do for recreation and enjoyment?
well, once in a while we'd go to a picture show, but we didn't spend our money for that. We had to save it, and we always tried to pay our debts. We do without in order to get our debts paid.
Did you, as a family, play like board games or anything like that?
Oh yeah, we played that. We played Chinese checkers a lot and things like that. Dominoes.
Did you ever play Monopoly?
Yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah, that started during the 30's.
Yeah, we played that.
Did you do like lawn croquet?
Oh yes, yes. We had a croquet set and actually that.
Oh sure. And did you play with other people in the neighborhood or just your family?
Oh yes, yes. Any neighbors come over.
And where did you live?
At 115 South Avenue.
Where you lived?
Yes.
Just most recently. Okay.
In that same house.
Okay. Yeah. And so there were a lot of young people in the neighborhood?
Oh yes, yes. Everybody had a bunch of kids.
Yeah. What do you remember about the weather then? You've already mentioned that it was hot.
Well, it was hot in the summertime, and then it's just as cold in the winter.
Okay.
One extreme followed the other.
More so than now, do you think?
Oh yes, it's different. I don't know how, but the heat, I don't know. It's just a little change in it.
Well, I think a lot of the records for weather, both cold and hot, were set during the 30's and haven't been broken since. So they probably were. Do you remember any dust storms in this area?
Oh yes.
And from the south,
yes.
The dust came in. And can you describe?
Well, that was a kind of, we had to sweep our porches off every morning because they were covered with dust. And it was a red dust. It wasn't like...
Yeah, so it came from a ways.
Yes, it did.
You've talked about your family moved because of the economy. Are there other things that your family had to do to adjust to the bad economy?
Oh, we were just like everybody else. I don't think there was anything.
Did your family have a big garden?
Oh yes, yes. Well, I was raised a big garden.
And then your mom and I suppose you girls did quite a bit of canning.
Oh, yes, yes, we did.
And what did you do for meat?
Well, we bought meat from the meat market, but we usually had meat once a day.
Okay.
And Mom cooked a lot of beans, cornbread, and things like that. But we all liked it. We just loved beans. Everybody liked beans.
Well, that's good.
and we did eat beans, green or dry.
Uh-huh. Well, that's good, and they're healthy, so, apparently, because you've done just fine. What kind of a Christmas do you remember?
Well, we had a very small Christmas, I'll tell you that. We got, each one of us got one gift, and that was it.
Can you remember a gift that you got?
Well, it was usually a pair of house slippers or something we needed to wear.
Uh-huh.
They never did, they bought the little kids a toy, but when we were that big and working, like, but no, they never did spend much for Christmas.
Uh-huh. Did you have a special meal that you?
Oh yes, yes, we always had Christmas dinner.
What did you have?
Usually turkey.
Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And did you have just your family or other families?
Oh, we had other families.
Uh-huh.
My aunts and uncles.
And did they come from Missouri to
Yes.
come here to celebrate with you?
Uh-huh.
Did you ever have oranges at Christmas as one of your gifts?
That was one thing we had was oranges.
Uh-huh. That seems to be pretty common, that to that time period, that people got oranges for Christmas, or an orange for Christmas. What did you do about your birthdays? Did you celebrate in any way?
We just, Bob usually made a cake for us,
Mm-hmm.
and we just had a cake, and that was it.
And what kind of cake?
Usually angel food.
Okay. Was that one of the few times that you'd have angel food, or was that a fairly common?
No, that was common, because Mom, see, that was her fantasy, was angel food cake.
Oh, uh-huh. Now, did you keep chickens in town, or did you have
No,
to?
we
You had to
didn't keep
purchase
chickens in town.
You had to purchase the
Uh-huh.
eggs. Okay. Do you remember any experiences with hobos or?
Not during the
Tramps.
30s. We had them down when we was in Missouri, but nothing
When you were on the farm?
on the farm.
Yeah.
We never
Okay.
went out after we moved to town.
What kind of music can you remember from the 30s?
Not much. we had a photograph.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, an
Uh-huh.
old Edison photograph.
Uh-huh. That you had to wind up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So that was something your family enjoyed, or?
Yes, we
Uh-huh.
did.
And did you have radio then in the?
Well, later we got radio. The first radio we had, my brother made it,
Oh.
and he had a crystal
Mhm.
and a little, what he called a cat whisker, that you'd have to tune it in and get it just right,
Oh.
and you use headsets to
Oh.
listen, and just one person could listen at a time.
Oh. Well, that must have been pretty soon after you moved here.
Yeah, that was it.
If you moved here in in 23. So I bet that was fairly soon, don't you think, in the 20s that you
Yes,
were?
it was.
And then was KMA and
KFNF,
KFNF, were
yeah.
they the ones you could
They
listen
were,
to?
that's all we could get.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And then do you remember when you got a receiver that was big enough that you could all listen to it?
Well, that was several years later, maybe 3 years later, or something like that. I'm just not sure what
Uh-huh.
year we got the regular radio.
Uh-huh. Do you have anything else from the 30s that you can think about that you would like to add?
I don't think so.
Okay, I have a question I'm gonna ask you that has nothing to do with the 30s. I wanna know if you were at the telephone company when World War II was going on, weren't you?
Oh, yes.
And can you tell any of the experiences you had with phone calls that came in
Yes,
during that time?
the year that, the Sunday that Hawaii was bombed,
Pearl Harbor.
I was working.
Oh, were you?
And we just worked a half a shift on Sunday because we didn't have, and one fella just kept calling number after number. And I got so busy. They just worked a half shift, and we and the other girls, we just got so busy. And I said to him, I said, number please, and he gave me them. I said, what's going on? And he says, we've been bombed. And then just about 30 minutes, the whole board just lit up full of lights. And I rang up home, and Edna was home. She was the chief operator at that time. And I said, listen to the radio, something's happened. And then they turned the radio in, and then when it began to get out, then we had to call extra help, and by 6 o'clock that evening, we had the whole force working. And that was December 7th. And then, when President Roosevelt had another spell. Was anything happen, and people get busy to call somebody, see if they knew it.
Sure.
And the same when I was working in the business office the day that Kennedy was shot. And they got busy, and the girls upstairs called and said, we need help, could you come up and help us? Well, I said to the manager, I said, their girls upstairs are awful busy, and he says, you go up and help them, I'll take care of this. So then I went up and worked until they could get more help to come in and take my place.
So you were really sitting on the edge of everything, weren't you? Yeah. When you when you were in the 30s, which is hopping all over here, you said you had these split shifts. Did people work at night, or was the telephone just, you couldn't make a phone call at night? Or?
Oh, no, oh yes, you could. They had one night operator.
Oh, okay.
She came on at 10 and got off at 6 the next morning.
Okay.
And
so there was a 24-hour service. Okay. I didn't know what.
yeah.
Well, you've had an interesting life. You've seen a lot of changes, haven't you?
Well, I have seen lots of changes. From the horse and buggy days to the space age and one thing.
And a time when like you say, the horse and the wagon were the chief way of getting places and to go. You got maybe 10 miles in a day.
Yeah.
And now people fly thousands and thousands of miles. Well, they get to the moon and back faster than you used to be able to go across the state. So.
We used to go to Omaha on the train. Right up to Omaha. The train went up in the morning and down in the evening. So we'd go up in the morning and do our shopping, and then we'd come back that night on they called it the 10:20.
And how much do you remember how much it cost to?
I don't remember. It wasn't very much, or we wouldn't have known.
Yeah. That was kind of a fun thing to do.
It was.
It would be now to go and sit and let something transport you to Omaha. Well, we've extended beyond the 30s, but thank you very much.
Well, you're entirely welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to help you.